This is the eCommerce Edge podcast with your host, Jason Greenwood. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the eCommerce Edge podcast. And before I introduce my amazing next guest, I would love to recommend that you go and anywhere where you're listening or watching this podcast, if you can like and share and recommend us. We didn't spend big advertising dollars like a Joe Rogan or anything like that. So we rely on our listeners and watchers to spread the good word about our content. We've got a back catalog of over 510 episodes now of the podcast for you to share amongst your friends. So if you get something out of this, we just would like to encourage you to go and share this content anywhere you think it makes sense to do so. But without further ado, it is my absolute pleasure to welcome SATEJ SIRUR, and I'm sure I butchered that, from Rocketium. Welcome, Satej.
Thanks for having me, Jason. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's lovely to have you along for the ride with me today. And before we get into what Rocketium is, what it does, and the target market you're going after, please maybe share with me and the audience how you got into this wonderful world of e-commerce, digital marketing, online trading, and really online creative. Like, what drew you into this world of e-com?
Yes, maybe let me start by admitting that I'm an imposter. I don't really know anything about any of these fields, at least when we started. It wasn't what the universe intended me to do when I started Rocketium. Originally, we were a game creation company. The idea was that people should be able to share their knowledge, ideas, inspiration with others in the form of short, playable mini games. And as we were doing that, the content formats evolved. It became stories, then it became video. And then when one of the largest e-commerce and advertising platforms in the world reached out to us, wanting to solve a problem around how do they make their advertisers more successful? How do they get them to make content that is compliant with the ad platform's guidelines and reduce the internal effort to review content, to make last minute edits and so on. They wanted to build their own product. They wanted to take our products, APIs, and build something. And then we realized that we should be probably building that product because we can iterate quickly. There are many other businesses who have this need. And that is how 5 years ago we got into this space.
Wow. And prior to that, and as I see here, you've been at this over a decade. So there was clearly a pivot along the way, which is what many startups have to do to stay relevant to the local market. They've got to pivot 1, 2, 3 times before they find product market fit. But prior to that, you come from a very strong software development background. You worked at Amazon as a software engineer. You were a software engineer at World Evolved Services. You worked back for over 3 years at Microsoft as a software engineer. So the reality is you come from a very strong technical background, which feels like a very natural place for you to end up building a product and going to market with that product. It feels like such a natural evolution for you.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And the other thing that I'm really happy about that my team have been able to do is to take the lessons and principles involved in software management and development and creation into the marketing and design world, because software people have been building software before anybody else. They've been building software for themselves. They want to be more productive. Anytime they have to do any activity more than 2 or 3 times, they have very little patience for that, and they would figure out a way to automate it. And so building software to improve your own work, just constantly micromanaging your own work, is quintessential experience of being a software developer. So we've really brought that lens into the marketing and design world and said, what is the annoying part that people don't even question? They just keep doing that work repetitively, and how do we free people from that? That's how the software was built over the years. It hasn't been one feature but hundreds of small and big capabilities that we've added with this exact lens.
It's a scratching an itch scenario, and this is so true. You're 100% correct. Anything a software engineer has to do more than 5 times, they're going to find a way to automate it, to streamline it, to make it faster, better, cheaper, and more efficient for themselves. So it makes absolute sense that you would look at all these market challenges through the lens of a software engineer, someone who's a true problem solver. Now, you pitch the platform, and in all transparency with my audience, I've never used Rocketium before, so I'm just going by what's on the tin. But what you couch this as, or what the byline is around Rocketium, is creative operations made agile and efficient. which effectively to me, and as I check out the website and as I look at some of the features and functionality built into the software, basically what it feels like the software is able to do is to help creatives create, or even non-creatives, even people that are perhaps in charge of creating creative for ads at scale without having to scale the team required to do so. In other words, we all know that the differentiating factor of most ads, the ones that succeed versus the ones that fail, they're creative. And unfortunately, you don't always know upfront which creative is going to perform well and which creative is not. And so therefore, you need to iterate many times, sometimes dozens or even hundreds of times for a specific ad. For it to perform well, you need to be able to do extensive testing across a massive range of creative, both still, video, etc. And so therefore, how do you do that? If you don't have a massive team sitting behind you, if you're a one-man band or you're a small business, you're a startup, and you're in this e-commerce game, how are you able to do that at scale without some sort of help from technology? And I know for me, for example, even taking that creative side into the podcasting space, I know, for example, I would not be able to put out the volume of episodes that I put out without AI automation, for example. And so I use Descript to do the initial cut, the initial edit of a podcast, to take out the ums and the ahs and make sure that it flows nicely and smoothly, make sure the audio sounds good, all that stuff. That initial first edit being done by AI cuts down my editing time by probably 90%. And so the reality is it frees me up to do more of this, which is to have these amazing conversations. That's just one example. And there's hundreds of examples I could cite where now I am able to do and produce a significantly higher output of creative in the market without having a team sitting behind me to help me do that. As a one-man band type of creator, I'm able to do that. And so it feels like what you're trying to do is bring that same level of scaling to small creative teams around ads.
Absolutely right, Jason. The only caveat that I would have here is that small teams, obviously, they have their own challenges, limitations, and they need support. But as the teams get larger, the network and the number of nodes in it increases the complexity of that network, so to speak. And they need more specialized software. So we really focus on large teams who don't want to get a lot larger. So in a way, yes, they want to continue staying the size that they are, but they are not small teams, just because when the teams get larger, there is a lot more support that they need, a lot more approvals come in, more teams get involved, more people are detached from the day-to-day process, and they only know a small part of the process. So they only focus on the tool that they are using. They only worry about the one product line that they are managing, the one channel that they are looking at, and maybe more central team has to do other work. So that's where the product really comes into the picture. And like I was saying earlier, it's not the one thing that you help with. There are many parts of the process. For example, take the review process. After having made the design, like you said, Rocketium helps you go from one design to many more designs in different sizes, different content versions, languages, whatever you might have. But then if I have to look at every piece of content and make sure stuff is aligned the right way, we are not using words that we are not supposed to use. There are platform guidelines. Some say you should have a button, some say you should not have a button, some say video has to be a certain length, and so on. How do you check for all of that if there are 1,000 pieces of content? People are wasting a lot of time doing that. So again, taking lessons from the software world, where there are automated test suites, we have automated brand testing, automated platform testing that would go and look for a standard set of guidelines and b very custom guidelines for your brand or your particular campaign that you have. And we would flag off maybe, and like you said, 90% of the work is done, you just have to do the remaining 10%.
Makes complete sense. And so I would almost think of your platform as an ad ops and orchestration platform. It certainly does help with the creative element too, but really it also helps to orchestrate large teams and how they have to work together and collaborate to get creative out the door throughout that sometimes an extended approval process. So where does your software, both from a pricing perspective and from a feature and function perspective, when does it start to make sense for creative teams? Is it 50 team members? Is it 25 team members? Is it 10 team members? When do you feel like that starts to hit your ICP in terms of scale, that it all of a sudden starts to create such a massive unlock that it becomes a no-brainer for creative ad teams?
It's a great question, Jason, because that's how we think about it, saying that at what point can we start adding real value to you and this does not become overhead, instead of saying that, hey, you're not qualified as a company to work with us or any of that, right? We just say that, hey, this is probably over engineered for you. So maybe you are not at the right, we are not the right fit for you at this time. So roughly at about 10 people in your creative team who are making anywhere from 2000 plus pieces of content every month. So about 100 to 200 pieces of content per person per day. If that is the pace that you are on, then that is really where Rocketium comes into the picture. These are teams who are typically spending 5 to 10 million upwards of that amount in paid ads. So that's where the analytics part of our product would also come into the picture. You are deploying so many pieces of content, you're putting so much money behind it. You want to make informed decisions about what sort of creative content we are making. If I want to make a change, can I figure out before it's too late that some pieces of content have to be refreshed or some creative directions are just not working for us? Of course, Facebook, Google, other platforms are doing a great job algorithmically rotating creatives and figuring out the right ones, but they won't tell you what creative choices you should be making for your next piece of next campaign or next update that you're doing. And that is where analytics also comes in. So over 10 people in the team, over a couple of thousand pieces of content a month, over $10 million of spend a year on paid ads, that's where Rocketium really starts to add a lot of value.
Or I guess where you are already spending significant money on marketing, digital marketing, paid and performance marketing, and you don't have the ability yet to scale creative to the degree that you want to, and you don't want to, let's say you've got 10 people on your team, but you're just not putting out the creative scale that you think you should or want to. In other words, there's just not enough content to do substantial ABM testing on to make sure that we get to a place that our ads are producing the best value that they can. Then I guess that's where you can come in and help them dramatically increase the scale
That is right.
of their creative output
People always
as a
tell
small
us
team.
they want to do more market localization, they want to do more A/B testing, but then when each piece of content has to go through so many steps, so many people, so many different things have to be done in order to get it right, the fault is not of the team or of any of the specific tools, but just because those tools are built for very specialized purposes. Photoshop, Figma are great products, but one is built for photo manipulation, one is built for UI design, and they are force fitting something else onto this, and so they are having to do copy paste work, just take the same design, make many copies of it, go and change something in all of those places. Those are places where they lose a lot of time and it completely creates a bottleneck which they are not able to get over. So when something like this comes, you are absolutely right that it completely unlocks this kind of experimentation for them. So teams are trying a lot more things, they are doing more sale events, they are localizing their content to more markets, thinking about more audiences and what sort of message resonates with them.
And you say on your website that you help marketers with 5 primary areas of their marketing operations. So, performance marketing, personalization, brand compliance, merchandising, and monetization. Those are kind of the 5 buckets if we think about it that way. And from a target ICP company perspective, e-commerce marketplace operators, retail omnichannel operators, large enterprises. So why don't you talk us through when we think about the use cases involved and the way that your software addresses those use cases? What actually is the software capable of doing? Does it take, for example, let's say you have a single piece of custom designed creative for an ad. Can it create variants of the ad automatically using AI or with some sort of imagery that it brings in from stock imagery or dynamically generated imagery, in situ type of imagery, etc. So it can take for example, a plain sofa and put it in on the background of a living room, for example, in situ. Even if the marketer only has an image of the sofa, then they can put it in different scenarios that make it more enticing or more engaging as an ad. So help us understand what the software actually does, functionally speaking, to help make marketers more efficient.
Yeah. So Jason, the problem that we are solving for these companies is putting together all of the ideas and concepts and assets that they have, which takes otherwise a long time to do. These are large companies, remember, so they already have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars doing high quality photo shoots. Somebody, a post production studio team has gone and edited and added shadows to it and just done all the right stuff. So even though we have the AI generated asset creation capabilities, most companies already have their assets. So these are either sitting on their asset management software, or Rocketium has its own asset management software. Same way, the base design of it, we have AI capabilities to come up with design ideas and suggest templates to you, but they already know exactly the design that they want. They have strong branding and design teams and agency partners who are saying that this is exactly what the design should look like. Here are 10 concepts that we want to go to market with. So they have all of that. Same way, copy generation, we have that with AI, but teams already know what copy they want. They have teams of translators and agencies. So what we are helping with is putting all of this together. So the way the process typically works without Rocketium is that there is a marketing brief in the form of a Word doc, Excel, something of that sort that says, here are all the product imagery. These are the audiences. This is the kind of copy that we want. These are the designs. Here are your Photoshop files, Figma files. Now, team, go and make it in all of these different sizes. Do this cross product multiplication of all of the copies and assets and languages and so on in all of these designs, in all of these sizes. That's when the design team would take that, go into a Photoshop Figma, start doing the copy paste work, then download all these files into a Google Drive, WeTransfer, something like that, hand it over to another team, which manually goes through this, writes it in a Jira, Asana, Trello, Monday.com, somewhere they would write all of their feedback, which then goes back into a Photoshop, and then you would get the final file. So far, all of this is focused only on making the creative. There is not yet analytics. I'll talk about that as well. But now this process completely transforms with Rocketium without it feeling like it has completely transformed. So teams still take a marketing brief, the Excel or Word doc, put that into a Rocketium, capture additional details about what sort of design and so on. They can then, designers can then upload their Photoshop or Figma files, which are automatically imported into Rocketium's design software, which can then take that and automatically adapt it into all the different sizes. So you don't have to sit and make it in all the different sizes. Then the copy, assets, the different versions that you have created gets exported as a feed or spreadsheet or something like that. And it automatically maps it to your design and makes hundreds of versions of that. One round of checks automatically runs, like I said, assets, copy, layouts, colors, things like that. It already checks and flags whatever is not okay. For the remaining ones, then the design team is doing their first pass of checks. In our product, they would assign it back to the marketer or ad sales team or agency partner or whoever. They get the request to edit it. They would look at it. Now they don't have all the design access. They can only maybe change the copy, maybe only change the assets. If nothing else, they can just put comments and say what has to be changed. So the entire process gets crashed. What teams were doing before, more or less, that is what they're doing. But a lot of copy paste work goes away. A lot of things that they would switch different software for now happens in the same place. Now, finally, once the design is done, you want to download this, the export is done in all the different formats that you want. Files are automatically compressed to comply with each platform's guidelines. Files are named according to your brands, your campaigns, file naming convention, what is called a taxonomy. These are small things that take up a lot of time, right? Again, this is the making the creative process where you already know what you want, you are able to execute that. When it comes to analytics, it's pretty much a similar process. Teams are manually going to every platform, downloading data, putting it into an Excel, and then doing some sort of analysis. And then they find out that, oh, I want to figure out if having cats versus dogs and two models versus a single model, how does that work? And now manually they have to go through every design, tag it, and then go and perform that analysis. With Rocketium, we automatically pull data from different platforms, clean it up, standardize it, make it available in a single dashboard. We can also automatically extract hundreds of design attributes. Again, the assets, imagery, colors, layouts, copy, all of those things, and then tag those creators. So you can do more interesting analysis. Plus, we have an AI co-pilot where you can ask interesting questions to it and it will do the analysis for you. So people who are very tech savvy, data savvy have all the data to work with so that they can do their analysis. And people who would rather have AI do that work, they could just ask those questions and get those insights.
So Rocketium will do auto tagging of the creative with the attributes of that creative. So
That's
let's
right.
say it's got Let's say it's got yellow, black, and green as the colors in the creative. Let's say it's got two models in the creative, and let's say it's got a dog in the creative, and it's at the beach, right? So it would tag that piece of creative with the three colors. It would tag it with beach. It would tag it with dog. It would tag it with two models. It would auto tag it, similar to how some of the auto tagging software works, or auto attribution software works, like an Ocular or something like that, with products, e-commerce products that don't have attributes applied to them yet for faceting and filtering on the front end and for segmentation and all that sort of stuff. Your software will do the same kind of thing for creative elements as well.
Exactly. And this is not just limited to the out of the box creative attributes that we give, but companies could have their very custom things. For example, somebody might want to say, I want to see if the creative has sports people or an individual sports person or fans or the venue. If it's a media and entertainment, a sports franchise or a league, for example, that is what they might want to do. And that is something that we could automatically extract. Some of it we built custom models to that we train and we look for, but other things, thanks to all the advancements in the LLMs, we're able to extract that. But Rocketium's value is in automatically fetching all the data, running these complex data pipelines to extract this kind of information, make it available in a central repository where you can do this analysis for yourself.
And so, what platforms do you connect to be able to extract this data out of? I'm guessing it's YouTube, it's Meta, it's Google Ads, it's maybe even Amazon ads. Where are you extracting this data from typically to be able to standardize that data pipeline?
All of these, Jason. In addition to that, people who have custom platforms, it could be, let's say, email systems, their own website data, they could upload custom Excel files that we could ingest and extract the same information out of it. The only thing we need as a platform is a link to a creative that we can then extract information out of. And then you would have defined a priori what sort of information you want to extract from it, and you can always go in later and say that I want to extract even more of this information from all your designs and so on. So the value is in being able to fetch this custom attributes, fetch all the standard data from each platform, including you uploading your own data to it, and then giving you access to easy analysis of this.
And so, would you connect to something like a Shopify? Let's say I'm a D2C brand and I'm running a Shopify website. Would you connect to Shopify and pull down the creative data of the images I've uploaded and linked to a specific SKU of a product and said, okay, cool, I've got 5 variants of this product. Which one is performing best? And then we can link that back to conversion rate data for those specific SKUs, et cetera, et cetera. That's something that people have to do manually today. And there is no standardized workflow for being able to do that. And in fact, in many instances, brands might even be looking at a Google Analytics or some other analytics platform, and they won't necessarily, apart from perhaps knowing if they compared two products side by side that were reasonably similar priced, et cetera, one's performing very well, one is not performing well. You may go, okay, cool. One has very clearly got more descriptive content, for example, or one's got one image and one's got 5 images. And so there may be some obvious things that stand out, but there's probably a lot less obvious things that just are different between the pure creative, the images and perhaps the videos that you've loaded against the products. And so that's the area where I think it becomes almost impossible for a marketer to look at all of the variables that have come into play that have generated the performance at a SKU level.
Absolutely. And before I get into the exciting part of all the interesting analysis that can be done, I want to call out that we don't integrate with Shopify today. People could upload custom data that they have downloaded from there into this. But just because of the kind of companies we work with, they are fairly large brands. So far, they're not on Shopify, and they primarily focus on their paid ad platform. Those are the integrations we've built. But the use case that you are calling out is absolutely perfect. It applies not only to paid ads, but also your website catalog or emails and all of that. But the other interesting way in which we do this, we've built this very interesting way to analyze your paid ads data, is to start from the very top and say that, okay, just summarize what's going on for me. So we can tell you across all the different kinds of objectives and every platform how many ads you're running, what you're spending on them, and what's the average performance of that. It could be ROAS or conversion rate or click through rate and so on. You can then dive deeper and say that, hey, visualize this as a 2 by 2 of where am I spending more and getting high outcomes, spending less but getting good outcomes. So maybe I need to spend more on it, or spending high but it's not working. Maybe I need to stop it. So Instantly we help you visualize all your ads across this 2 by 2. You can then dive deeper and say that, hey, all the high performing and high spend ones, can you tell me what's in those creatives so that I can compare that to my high spend but low conversion creatives and compare those. So that's when you're able to extract even more interesting information, saying for some of our customers, they find things like, I have a lot of emphasis on my partners because that creates credibility. For this doesn't tell you why somebody felt a certain way. It's telling you what's common in the high performing ones, right? Or it could be the way you talk about pricing is, instead of an absolute value, maybe you're talking about how much off. Instead of just saying how many dollars off, maybe you're saying how much percentage off. Those are, like you said, there are nuances to this, which nobody is going to sit and tag them. Nobody is going to consciously make those design choices, right? Having shadows versus no shadows. It's very hard to analyze every possible creative choice that you've made.
Makes complete sense. I think what AI has helped to unlock more than anything else is being able to do tasks at scale that you simply are not able to do, even if you had almost an unlimited budget, even if you had unlimited human resources, which no company does. But even if you did, even if you were a company that was at scale globally, a Coca-Cola, for example, which has virtually unlimited resources to be able to do any kind of ad that they can possibly want to run, they can produce, right? Or a Nike or whatever. They have almost unlimited marketing funding. Now, of course, they still will look at ROI and they'll still look at performance. But the reality is that, as you rightly point out, even the largest companies in the world who can technically have the ability to create unlimited creative, they don't necessarily know which creative to make, or they don't necessarily know, of those million pieces of creative we made over the last 12 months, it's very difficult, except for maybe at the individual ad level. We might know, okay, that piece of creative and that specific ad performed well and it drove a lot of revenue, it drove a lot of clicks, it drove a lot of performance, it drove a lot of conversions. But it's very difficult to make that into a repeatable process without some form of AI. Because if you were to look at 1,000, even if one of the best marketers in the world was to look at 1,000 ads that performed well, 1,000 ads that didn't perform well, it's gonna be like a lot of gut feel as to why the 1,000 ads performed well and the 1,000 ads did not perform well. Maybe they could pick out some similarities between the 1,000 ads that performed well. Maybe they couldn't. Maybe they would say, okay, in general, of the 1,000 ads that performed well, the ones that had human beings in them for whatever reason, seems like they perform generally better than those that are a landscape shot, for example, or those that have a predominance of blue seem to perform better than those that have a predominance of red for whatever reason, or ones that have our logo in the creative perform better than the ones that don't have our logo in the creative, or vice versa. They might be able to pull out some very general trends. People that are very good at natural pattern recognition. There are some creatives that are just very good at that. But those are like unicorns.
Yeah.
Those are unicorn creatives, right? And those creatives are rare. They're hard to find. They're very expensive. And so what I think this does, it feels like with AI, we now that levels the playing field, and it allows AI to draw parallels between these pieces of creative that are very difficult for humans to do at scale.
Yep. And even if humans could do it, at some point you would call doing that sort of work torture.
Yeah.
Go through 1,000 pieces of content. Here are 100 different creative attributes. Just go and manually tag them. Even if somebody could do it, why would you make a talented, motivated human being do this? It's just torture to have somebody do this. If software can do it 99% accurately, wouldn't you want software to do this part? So that's one part of it. The second is that most people are not wrong about the decisions that they're making. Like you said, they have a general sense of what works, what does not work. But would you want your doctor to work this way, saying, don't really get any tests, don't look at real metrics, and don't put any probes in your on your skin to figure something out? I'm just going to be hand wavy about this and give you some diagnosis. Would you be okay if your doctor is 75% right? Most marketers, creative people are at least 75% right. But when you have a few $1 million of budget at stake, when you have big numbers that you're doing, would you want to be 75% right, or would you want the chance to be 80% right, 85% right, 95% right?
And I think it feels also like only with the advent of multimodal AI has this really become possible. So, for example, I can upload an image that's got some text on it, it's got some people in it, and the AI can now detect, okay, there's one guy, one girl in it. The girl has blonde hair, the guy has brown hair, the girl has blue eyes, the boy has brown eyes. Like, it's only, and I even see it, the advances in multimodal AI with ChatGPT, and I'm a Plus subscriber, and the ability for me to upload images and say, okay, that image, for example, might have Spanish text embedded in the image. And I'll ask it to translate that to English for me. It can scan the Spanish out of the image and then translate it into English text for me. Whereas historically, in the early days of LLMs, I would have to upload the Spanish text. I would have to paste the Spanish text in myself in some way or type it out. And then I would have to get it to translate the text into text. But now we have multimodal and multi-format AI that can translate data or extract data in multiple different ways from the same type of asset. It could be a PDF, it could be a spreadsheet, it could be an image, it could be almost any type of digital data, and it can extract information in a meaningful way from that data. It could be something as simple as an image of a pie graph or a pie chart, for example, and it can export that into a spreadsheet or into a table in a meaningful way for me so that then I can manipulate the data and work with the data from there. So what I love about multimodal AI is it's unlocking new ways to interact with different types and formats of data than we've ever been able to before.
Absolutely. I think this is really the ultimate form of computing that the creators of computers would have imagined back when Isaac Asimov and all of them were writing science fiction stories. This is what they were imagining software should do. And finally, we are living in the future. I think many people do realize that we've pulled the future from the future into the present, but many of them are yet to experience this. So I'm glad to hear you are already living this futuristic world, but many more are yet to experience this. There's a lot of repetitive, manual, really mind numbing work that many teams are doing. And that's what we are trying to do with software. Bring this kind of AI, this kind of automation into their lives and help them see that there is so much more that they can do.
No question about it. Now, if we were to look out 6, 12, 18 months from now, is there anything your software doesn't do yet today that your customers are asking for, or are you seeing other gaps in the market that you're not doing today that you would like to add? What's high on your priority list from a feature and functionality, pardon me, from a feature and functionality perspective to add over time?
It's a great question, Jason. So, a big thing that I'm obsessing over is that are there some parts of the work that should not require people to go and ask software, whether a UI or an AI, saying, do this for me? Are there certain things that are known that the software can do on its own? Either it could be triggered based on, I was telling you, the photo studio team has taken a bunch of shots. They dump it somewhere. Should that automatically trigger a workflow? I'm going to look at all of these, remove the backgrounds from it, generate 6 other backgrounds, add the right type of shadows to it, create 6 sizes of that because it's required for different formats. I'm going to cut it and keep that ready. That is just for assets. Same way, one person has worked on a design, they go to bed. By the time they're up next morning, could it have made 6 other changes within it, automatically flagged certain things that they haven't done or they should be doing, and made versions of that and kept it ready for you, saying that, hey, these are things you would be needing. Same way with analytics. Can we look out and see trends saying certain pieces of content are dipping in performance? There is a chance that after 3 days, 5 days, 7 days, the performance is going to dip. By the way, here are 6 ideas of refresh that you should be trying, and tell me when you're ready. I'm going to deploy them, right? So that way, can there be automated things that are running in the background, working for you and keeping things ready for you so that when you look at it, you say that, hey, either this is I don't need this. This is a good idea. Thanks for being proactive, but I don't need this help. Or say that, hey, this is great. This is exactly what I needed. I'm going to make a few minor edits to this and then set this up to go live whenever it should. So that's really what I'm thinking about, saying, do you really need people to come in and type and ask these questions? Or if you already know what the unicorns, like you said, the unicorn creators, unicorn marketers, unicorn analysts, what do they do? If we know some of those things, then can we have them do that work with you, for you, so that instead of replacing your work, they are helping you focus on things that are more elite, so that some of these things are happening at an elite level in the background.
This feels more like an agentic AI approach for sure. It feels like doing something, an activity on your behalf. I think even with my bank here in Mexico, for example, so I make an HOA payment every single month on the same day. It's the first, I think it's the first Thursday of the month or whatever it is. And I make the same payment every single month to my HOA, my homeowners association. And it's the same amount, it's the same everything. It's the same payee, it's the same absolutely everything about it. And after about I think it was the third time I made that payment manually, there was the next time I opened my banking app, it asked me, it says, oh, it looks like it said in Spanish, of course, it said basically, oh, it looks like you make this payment every month on the same day, same value, whatever. Would you like to set this up as a recurring payment automatically? If yes, basically just click yes. And it's going to automatically set that up without me having to navigate to the payment section, me having to define the payee, me having to define the frequency, me having to define the amount, me having to define all those things, and then set that up as an automatic payment. It's detected that I'm making an automatic payment every month, and it's able to set all of that up in the background for me by me clicking the button C, yes, and then boom, it just can make everything happen behind the scenes as if I went away and did that work. And so is that the type of thing you're thinking of, where we say, okay, in the software, we're detecting that when this user logs in, every single day, they do these 5 steps every single day, repetitively every single day, and these are the types of outcomes that they typically get, and these are the outcomes that they say yes to, and here's the outcomes that they say no to. Is it detecting that type of repetitive action at the user level, or perhaps at the role level, that you then think, geez, why don't we just offer this up as an automation, because we've detected that this is something that happens every single day, all the time?
Yeah, I think that's a next level magical thing that we would like to do, where user action is driving some of these things. But today, the place where we want to focus is, what are the standard things that platforms tell you have to do, or as a brand, what are some things that you want your team to do, and we want to be able to codify that and create, exactly like you said, agentic AI workflows, to say that if you know that every piece of content has to go through these steps, let's set that up. If you know that from every design, which is what we already do, from every design that is being run on some platform, extract these 10 pieces of information. Now, if there have to be 15, you can quickly set that up. That is when it pulls in that piece of content, we extract 5 more pieces of information. Where this thing will get even more interesting is if you can stitch together these more disparate workflows instead of a single piece of software at a time. So the reminder that you said is a very specific thing, but that if there is, like I was giving you that example, that you upload a brief, and can the next 5 steps happen automatically without you being involved at all, and then it just gives you the last version saying, hey, I've already imported all of this. I took the liberty of picking 2 new products that have been added into the asset library but weren't mentioned here, and we've already looked at 3 copies I rejected because they're not on brand. I've kept them here for you and marked them in red so you don't use it. So that's where we would want to go. Before we start detecting from user behavior and learning from that, there are already standard best practices or standard expectations that you would have. First, we would want to codify that.
It feels almost like a creative director role. I'm a non-creative, apart from speaking and writing. That's my creative outlet. I can't draw to save me. I'm not a creative like my wife. My wife's very artistic. I don't really have that gene in me. I don't play music. My sister does. So I don't really have that naturally creative flair or that natural vision for, oh, that looks good versus that doesn't look good, whatever. I just don't really have. I'm just not wired that way like a creative, but it feels like a really awesome creative director who would typically behind the scenes be orchestrating all these steps, all these approval workflows, all of these key points that we want to make sure we cover in the creative process. It feels like almost like a digital creative director that we're trying to create here.
Yeah, absolutely. A digital creative director, an elite digital marketing manager, an analytics person. Instead of trying to replace what you were doing, they are now saying that, hey, these are mundane things. Can I take that out of your way? These are cross team things that I can connect and keep it ready for you, so that even for you, even if you're not a creative person, if I show you 2 things, you can at least pick from them the one that looks a little bit more reasonable to your eye as a consumer of it, right? So those are places where it can help, and just say that, hey, here are options. I believe you should take this, but here are 3 other options. What do you think? You press a button and then it goes ahead. So I think that's really what we are trying to do. Like you said, an elite creative director, marketing manager, analytics person, on demand, running 24/7, even when you're in bed.
And do you think that you'll get to a place where you will also have predictive analytics built into the platform that says, okay, we think these three pieces of creative, this is how we think they would perform in a side-by-side heads-up comparison in the same ad space, in the same platform, in the same location, with the same ad spend applied to them. We think that these three would perform X, Y, and Z over the next 60 days or whatever it is. And then obviously you'd have to have a look back. You'd have to pull in the real data. Maybe we deploy those as three different ad groups, for example. And we would hopefully get to a point where we have the predictive, then we have the look back. We compare those two, and hopefully the divergence between the predictive and the look back would get narrower and narrower to where we get to a place where we have ultra greater than a 90% confidence level that a specific piece of creative is going to perform in a specific way against our audience over time. And obviously that would always have to be iterative because our audience is going to change over time. Pop culture changes over
Yeah.
time.
World
There's all sorts
changing,
of things that change.
tariffs could come in at any point.
Exactly. And so obviously we would always have to be doing a comparison between predictive and look back, but it feels like that's going to get us to a much higher rate of probability of high performance.
You're absolutely right, Jason. I think you would make a great product manager because these are exactly the sort of things that we are working on. Some of it we have already built, some of these are getting better in our roadmap. But yeah, the prediction part, we've actually built some parts of it. It's fairly good because it looks at your new creative direction, something you've never tried before. And we look at it and say that this looks this percent similar to these pieces of content that you run. So now if you run it in the future, this is how it will work. Now, where this can get even better is to say that for a certain audience or objective or spend and so on, if you could slice and dice and make that prediction, today it tells you at a blanket level, these are the similar creatives, this is how they performed, and that's why this is how this one is going to perform. So you're absolutely right. I think prediction really takes it to the next level. And that's why we think of Rocketium as these two sides of the same coin, which is one is creative and one is performance. Now, even if you don't deploy these pieces of content for paid ads, but for email or Shopify or whatever, ultimately the purpose of marketing content is to persuade somebody, right? It's not just always to buy. It could be to donate, it could be just to feel a certain way about a brand, whatever it might be, right? And there is always an element of performance, even if it's not a paid marketing campaign. You want your piece of content, you want your message to resonate in some way, and why not give it the best chance it has to succeed? So some part of it is going to be the creative concept, some part of it is going to be your knowledge of the audience and brand and all of those things and new ideas. But then one part of it is how have similar things performed in the past based on what I know about the channel and the industry and the audience. Can I make an educated guess about, instead of this, what else should I be trying?
Wow. I love it. And how do you guys make your money? You're a full SaaS platform. Your customers access your technology via the browser. What is your pricing model? Is it tiered? Is it number of users? Is it number of pieces of creative that you're managing? Is it internal versus external teams? Kind of how do you break down how you charge your customers for your technology?
Yeah, it's a combination of everything that you mentioned. Primarily, our customers, the pricing increases as they get more value. The more value in the case of for the creative side of things is more content that they produce. We do charge for licenses, but that's a smaller amount. The real place where the pricing comes in is it's a fraction of what you would have paid in order to hire somebody or to outsource it. So even though pricing scales with that, it's a fraction of what you would have had to pay if a person had to do it. So the number of pieces of content that you would export, the number of AI actions that you would do. On the performance side, the pricing is based on the amount of creatives that we ingest and analyze, the number of creative attributes that we extract out of it, the number of AI analysis that you would do. It's a combination of both of those. And yeah, for
Okay.
agencies, there is a slightly different pricing. It's similar in amount, but smaller per client that they would serve. So if you have three small clients, you would pay the same as what a large brand would pay, but per client, you're paying a lot less.
Makes a lot of sense. And what do you think the of this space holds? Do you have any competitors in this space, or do you believe that you are doing something so totally unique that this is a space you can own from a creative management and workflow and orchestration perspective. Is there anybody else working on this? What do you think the future holds for creative marketing? It feels like it's going to become definitely less gut feel driven and a lot more data and analytics driven for sure. And it feels like in some respects, maybe we're taking creativity away from the creatives. I hesitate to use that term because I feel like it's looked at another way. We could say we're giving creatives superpowers. And I think that's another way to look at this. But where do you think this industry is headed when the overall market is largely being held hostage by a couple of very large, very global gatekeepers in terms of there's a few breakout brands that maybe haven't had to rely on paid performance marketing. Maybe there's a few brands that don't sell on Amazon that are all D2C, for example, or whatever. But we've seen the fate of Allbirds. We've seen the fate of lots of D2C brands that have decided, in the case of Nike, where they went heavily focused on D2C and then they had to wind that back and say, oh, we now need to work with retailers again. We have to have we have to have a robust wholesale business. So there's a lot of challenges that the industry faces, quite apart from tariffs and the global reordering of where manufacturing is going to be done. And I know this, I'm asking you to look into a crystal ball here, but as somebody who works in this industry, first of all, are you seeing more brands being interested in making this shift to automation and willing to spend big on the technology to be able to make that happen? Or are you seeing kind of resistance from certain quarters of the industry, which they feel that creative should always rest with a human being and never use technology to get them there?
Yeah, so I think most brands are open to this, even if they have certain reservations about the role of software, the role of humans in this. There is pressure right from the board level to reduce costs, bring in more AI automation. You saw the Shopify CEOs, the memo that started going viral, and that's being circulated in every single boardroom, trust me. And so everyone is asking, why are we not using, and especially in the marketing and creative world where outsourcing has been so predominant. This is one of the earliest cases of outsourcing in the world. So a lot of people are asking that question, that, and a lot of agency partners that we speak with talk about this pressure, saying that in the world of AI, why am I paying you this much money? How do you lower cost? How do you prove to me that you are using AI and automation? So we are also seeing agencies as being a great partner and a go-to-market partner for us. So where I see this going is there are broadly three types of software companies who will cater to this need, because this need is not latent anymore. It is very much on the surface. Every company is exploring this. But three kinds of companies, even on the software side, there are large gatekeepers, the Adobe, Figma, some of these companies have been around for a long time. They will, through acquisitions, through building software, they're already trusted by large enterprises, small companies. So they will build a lot of these capabilities, become a little more complete, closer to what Rocketium has. You are seeing some of this, and this will continue. And that's a great direction because they have such a vast reach. For them to offer this kind of service, they really can make everybody else more productive, more successful, more data driven, like you said. Then there are companies like us who have been specifically doing this for a few years. There are companies like Smartly, Celtra, Bannerflow, Storytech, who are more or less in the same space as we are. Some do a little bit more, some do less. And then there are companies who are either too young right now or yet to be born, right? They are the ones where there is most promise, there is potentially most disruption. They will disrupt a lot the both of these categories unless the companies in these two categories can move fast and innovate what all of us are trying to do. The risk also for these new companies is that if they don't really have their own tech, they haven't built the analytics themselves, the design software themselves, anything on collaboration, and they only rely on the large language models to do all the heavy lifting, then they can quickly add a lot of value, grow quickly in revenue, but then these other two categories can add that as well, right? And they will have superior distribution, superior knowledge of customers. And so those are the three ways I think in which this problem will be solved. But the future definitely very interesting. If I had to take a bet on which of these three categories would win, it would be very hard to do so because all are moving at different pace, and the ones who can move really fast, make really bold bets, those are the companies that will win. And I don't believe any category is immune from that sort of good behavior.
No, I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think those three buckets are all progressing at lightning speed, and the biggest of the players realize that they are the middle tier that you referred to, the likes of yourselves, who've been doing this for a couple of years. I think they realize that that's where the biggest threat comes from to their monolithic, decades-old businesses and business models. I think that they're feeling the heat there, and they are making big, bold acquisitions in the space to make sure that they stay relevant, that they stay current. And have you taken on any funding? Do you see a future where maybe you do get acquired by a Figma or a Adobe or some of the 800-pound gorillas in the space? Is that something you would like to see? Is that something you would resist? What do you think the future holds specifically for you guys?
Yeah, so Rocketium has raised over 12 million in funding so far. We are a Series A company. Right now, our goal really is to go to market, take what we have built, really evangelize this product and movement and way of thinking and take it to more people. Along the way, if it's an IPO, if it is staying private, if it is getting acquired, whatever is the right outcome at that point, we are open to it. We've been doing this for 10 years, so it's not we have less patience or we are very eager to hand this off to somebody. So we are patient, we have long term thinking. If there is a better path for us to join forces with somebody, we would be open to that. But really, I think right now the focus should be on customers. It should be on taking this amazing tech that all of us have been blessed with and using it to build great software and add value to people. And yeah, who knows what's in store for us next year and the year after that. But I think we have a lot of value that we can add independently. I would like to see where we can go with that. And yeah, if the future holds something different, we would be open to that as well.
I love it. A realist, a pragmatist, but also hyper ambitious. Can't ask for anything more out of a great founder and CEO. So I wish you every success with the company. Now, look, an hour has absolutely flown by. I've really appreciated the conversation. I've learned a ton. You clearly know your stuff. You clearly know your product. You're clearly proud of where you sit in the pantheon of AI technology out there for creatives. Now, as we do come down to the end of our time together, this is where I get to flip the script. I get to hand the microphone over to you. I get to let you ask me one question, any question you like, can be personal or professional. So, Satej, CEO of Rocketium, what is your question for me today?
So, Jason, I've been very impressed with your knowledge of what we do. I don't imagine that this is a space exactly what we do is something you think about day and night. So, I'm curious, how did you get to pick up a lot of what we do in the short amount of time that you have? So, is it that books that you read, which is giving you that podcast? So, how do you keep yourself abreast of all of this interesting new tech and connect all the dots so quickly?
Great question. And look, I think it's a combination of a few things. I am constantly curious. I just have unending curiosity. And I think I'm also a tech early adopter in most instances. Not always a tech early adopter, but I would say the majority of the time I'm a tech early adopter. Always have been my whole life. I've always been interested in technology. My dad, I grew up with in an entrepreneurial family where my father owned originally a typewriter sales and service company, and then he moved into computer sales and service. And so I guess from a very young age, I've been exposed to what was then cutting edge technology. And so I guess technology's never really scared me. I've always been inquisitive about it, and it's always interested me naturally. And as someone who is a very technical non-developer, I have to learn from and be exposed to people like you who are technicians, who are engineers, who are developers. I'd like to think I speak the language of developers because I've run and built agencies before, and even today, when I work with my merchant clients, for example, and I have to put a BRD together for them, I have to speak the language of technical people, but I also have to speak the language of business people and try to bridge the gap between those two and be a two-way translator of those things. And then finally, I think one of the things that has helped me and one of the reasons why I even started this podcast is I get to routinely speak to people that are way smarter than me. People like you, for example, especially in your area of expertise. You are way ahead of where I am. And I'm very lucky. I get to release 3 new podcast episodes a week. And so that gives me, I've always got 10 or 12 episodes of each type already in the pipeline, ready to go out. And so I'm recording and doing post production on 8 to 10 hours worth of content per week, in addition to the content I put out across LinkedIn and all the other channels and Reddit and everywhere else. So I'm constantly having these kind of conversations and reading industry newsletters, reading content on LinkedIn. I have a lot of very close friends who are super technical. So we're always having technical conversations. I guess it's a combination of different sources, but I'm definitely immersed in and living in this space every day. Plus, I've redirected. One simple thing I've done is I've redirected all of my web searches now to ChatGPT with a browser plugin with Brave. And that seems like something stupid or simple, but that has made a massive difference in my understanding of how to craft prompts that get the right response from AI, these LLMs. I'm using Grok every day now as well. I wish they had a browser plugin because I would switch from OpenAI to them, I think, and ChatGPT to them. But yeah, those are some of the ways I try to stay current on new technologies, just to play with it as much as I possibly can, because I'm just curious about how it works.
Great advice, Jason. Thank you so much.
I really appreciate your time, and I can't wait to speak to you again soon, and I wish you every success with Rocketium. Are you a B2B or D2C e-commerce merchant? Then head over to greenwoodconsulting.net to learn how we can help you scale your business.